Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
True crime with a dash of the paranormal, the garish, the strange, and the darkly comic. I'm Zevin Odelberg, host of Kinda Murdery, a podcast that's about more than just murder. It's my very own pocket dimension, home to a curated collection of bizarre and compelling stories, the unsolved, the unsettling, and the unbelievable. I cover it all, just so long as it's kinda murdery. That's the truth, just like it says in the intro. I am Zevin Odelberg, and this is Kinda Murdery. Got a story for you today about a small-town monster having one hell of a midlife crisis, and I'm going to jump right into it. So, if you're ready, please join me as we uncover what truths we can and solve what mysteries we may. Kinda Murderies. The devil lurks behind the cross. The murder of Kari Baker starts now. In the city of Waco, Texas, on April 10, 2006, the atmosphere was dense with a sense of loss and melancholy. The occasion was the funeral of Kari Baker, a devoted wife to a Baptist minister named Matt and a respected third-grade teacher. The gathering was so sizable that it had to be moved to one of the city's larger funeral homes rather than the cozy confines of Crossroads Baptist, where Matt Baker was a preacher. The crowd overflowed, filling up not just the seats but also the aisles with folding chairs. Some mourners were relegated to standing positions along the back walls or peering in from the foyer. The hymn, "If You Want Me To," reverberated through the air, sung by a soloist, evoking the struggle and pain that mark human existence. Steve Sadler, a lecturer in the religion department at Baylor University, led the service. He referenced verses from Kari's own Bible that spoke of God's boundless love, verses Kari herself had underlined. This was a woman who had made her presence felt not just in her church where she spearheaded children's programs, but also in the local elementary school where she taught third grade. And yet, an unspoken weight hung heavy in the room. Kari Baker, just 31 years old, had struggled every year around late March, grappling with insurmountable grief. It was the anniversary of the loss of her second child, Cassidy, who had died 7 years earlier from brain cancer. Each year, the anguish was so great that Kari would sequester herself at home, spending her days in bed, watching old videos of Cassidy's innocent crawl across the floor. This year, the burden seemed to have become unbearable. According to the police report, Kari had left a typed note on her bedside table and overdosed on sleeping pills. The note was achingly simple, yet profoundly haunting. It said, quote, "I want to give Cassidy a hug. I need to feel her again," unquote. The narrative that permeated the funeral service was of a life consumed by grief. In the wake of Kari Baker's funeral, the community turned its gaze toward Matt, her husband, a minister of just 35 years old. He sat in the front row at the service, his demeanor a tableau of inconsolable sorrow. When he lifted his head from his hands, his eyes, a light blue hue that was almost startling, met the congregation's gaze. After the eulogy, Matt found the strength to stand beside the pulpit, his two remaining daughters flanking him. With each hug and expression of condolences he received, he assured the congregation that he'd be back to preach on the most hopeful day of the Christian calendar, Easter Sunday. "God has not abandoned me," he whispered to one close friend. "He will give me the strength to carry on." In the days that followed, Matt was compared to the biblical figure of Job, a man who remained steadfast in his faith despite unimaginable trials. The church community circled around him. Emails and letters from fellow ministers flooded in, commending his unwavering devotion. His congregation offered practical help, chores, meals, and even an offer from one woman to teach him how to style his daughter's hair. But something unsettling began to be murmured about a month later. Rumors surfaced that Kari's mother, Linda Doolin, backed by her sisters and niece, was conducting her own investigation into Kari's death. The whispers intensified when word got out that Linda and her husband Jim had engaged a lawyer and private investigators. This was puzzling to many. After all, the Hewitt police had been convinced enough of Kari's suicide that they hadn't even requested an autopsy. Then, in September, the whisperings finally found footing in shocking reality. Based on findings by Linda and her cohort, dubbed the Charlie's Angels of Waco by some, the police reversed their initial judgment. Matt Baker was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife Kari. The allegations were as grim as they were stunning. Matt was accused of drugging Kari with medication and alcohol before suffocating her with a pillow or similar item. The revelation struck at the very core of the Waco Baptist community, a place often referred to as Jerusalem on the Brazos, home to Baylor University, the world's largest Baptist educational institution, and a veritable patchwork of Baptist churches. Waco epitomized a community of faith. Paul Stripling, a prominent pastor and the former head of the Waco Baptist Association, summed it up, saying, "Waco is where lives revolve around churches. It's a city where heads bow in prayer over restaurant tables. This is not a place where anyone expects to hear that a pastor, especially one of our Baptist pastors, could be accused of murdering his wife." The appalling turn of events sent ripples of disbelief and confusion through a community that until then had prided itself on its spiritual fortitude. What had started as a tragic tale of loss had transmuted into a dark narrative of suspicion, casting a shadow over a community and a faith that had thrived on the strength of its conviction. Murder wasn't the sole allegation that shook the very core of Waco, Texas. Linda Doolin, a 54-year-old college professor, along with her team of private investigators, and of course Linda is also Kari's mother, unearthed alarming information about Matt Baker. According to her, the pastor had led a double life. One as a sexual predator, targeting teenage girls and women. Disturbingly, there was even an incident during his student days at Baylor where he was accused of attempted sexual assault. Linda dropped a bombshell by suggesting that Matt's motive for murdering her daughter might have been twofold, saying, "Perhaps Matt chose to end my daughter's life because he had fallen for a new romantic interest, a 24-year-old single mother attending his church," Linda speculated. Or it might have been because Kari had discovered his other life and posed a threat of exposing him. Regardless, he wanted her gone. The fallout was instantaneous and massive. The Waco Tribune-Herald, normally a subdued publication, splashed the allegations across its front page. Suicide? Murder? It's a mystery. Shannon Gamble, a local housewife, even launched a website to keep the community updated on every twist and turn of the case. The media circus reached a fever pitch with television crews from ABC's 2020 and CBS's 48 Hours descending upon Waco to get the inside scoop. Amid the chaos, Kimberly Berry, a 34-year-old married mother, voiced the incredulity that gripped many. "Matt was an incredible pastor. His sermons spoke directly to me. Now I'm left feeling utterly disillusioned," she lamented. Could it be that a man who appeared so devout was actually someone else entirely? For the faithful in Waco, this wasn't merely another headline. It was a moral quandary, an existential dilemma ripped right off the pages of the Bible. Was Matt Baker a man of God unfairly targeted by vengeful in-laws? Or was he, to use Baptist vernacular, a man consumed with demons, a monstrous deviant wrapped in the guise of piety? If the latter were true, how had he managed to operate so long under the radar in a city deeply intertwined with faith? The community wrestled with these harrowing questions, finding themselves in a crisis of faith that went beyond any murder investigation. Matt Baker was not the kind of Baptist pastor one would immediately recognize from central casting. Instead of an imposing figure with a larger-than-life persona, Matt stood at the modest height of 5'7", dressed unpretentiously in an economical button-down shirt and slacks. His most striking feature was his face. It bore an uncanny resemblance to the sorrowful countenances found in Renaissance paintings of early Christian martyrs. When confronted with the pointed question of whether he murdered his wife Kari, Matt's eyes welled up with tears. "Of course not. I was Kari's protector," he declared, his voice fraught with emotion, his eyes diverted, locking onto a nondescript wall. "The tragedy here," he solemnly proclaimed, "is that no one, none of us, understood the depths of her depression." Matt's attorney, Guy James Gray, a man of considerable reputation for his prosecutorial work in the infamous James Byrd dragging case, watched intently. Gray had taken Matt's case pro bono, a powerful statement in itself. When it came to physical evidence, Gray underscored, there was nothing implicating Matt. The charges were speculative at best. "What's being done to this young man is an injustice," Gray solemnly stated. Here was a young man who seemed to exude sincerity and piety, a man who had grown up in a household brimming with the virtues of love and acceptance, surrounded by foster siblings who had faced hardships far beyond their years. Raised by Oscar and Barbara, a quiet, diligent couple, Matt had committed himself to ministry at a young age, eventually attending Baylor University to hone his ministerial skills. A former classmate, now a prominent Waco pastor, was baffled by the allegations against Matt. "He seemed like a phenomenal Christian young man," said the pastor, unable to reconcile the Matt Baker he knew with the accusations leveled against him. Yet there was an unsettling event lurking in Matt's past. An incident at Baylor involving a female trainer, a roommate of Billy Graham's granddaughter no less. She had accused him of a harrowing attempt at sexual assault. Matt, however, shrugged off the event, attributing it to a misunderstanding, even asserting that the university administration had dismissed her claims as unfounded. The allegations against Matt Baker splintered the Waco community, casting doubt on a man many had once seen as a paragon of virtue. Even Kimberly Berry, a parishioner who had found solace in Matt's sermons, was grappling with an unsettling cognitive dissonance. Could a man who so compellingly spoke the word of God be a wolf in sheep's clothing? In Waco, a city rooted in its religious communities, the charges against Matt Baker weren't just scandalous, they were sacrilegious. People grappled with the age-old struggle between good and evil, asking themselves whether Matt was an unfairly persecuted man of God or a nefarious predator exploiting his ecclesiastical cover. In a place where faith often informed fact, the community teetered on a moral precipice, its collective conscience weighing the implications of Matt's guilt or innocence. The story was far from ordinary. It was biblical in scope, challenging the community's convictions about sin and redemption, about guilt and innocence, because the core question remained, who exactly was Matt Baker? Was he a humble servant of God who had tragically lost his wife? Or was he a man capable of deceit, manipulation, and even murder? And if the latter was true, how had he managed to conceal his dark proclivities in a city like Waco for so long? These were questions that demanded answers, as the eyes of a riveted community and a nation remained fixed on the unfolding drama. A drama that tested the very fabric of belief, trust, and community. The narrative of Matt Baker, a Baptist minister from Kerrville, Texas, unfurls like a tightly wound coil, revealing complex layers of intrigue, moral ambiguity, and hints of malfeasance. However, Matt's background is far more complicated than his outward piety suggested. Though his upbringing seemed to be a model for Christian virtues, raised in a group foster home led by his hardworking parents, his history carries questionable episodes that cast shadows on his character. At Baylor University, where he aimed for a career in church recreation, a female trainer accused him of sexual assault. The university's investigation tilted in Matt's favor, and the woman left the school. In another incident post-marriage, 2 separate reports emerged about Matt's inappropriate conduct with women at First Baptist Church, although no formal action was taken. This tale unfolds against a backdrop where ecclesiastical governance is fragmented. The Baptist General Convention of Texas provides no centralized oversight, allowing churches to operate autonomously. This lack of structure can sometimes offer pastors like Matt a cloak of impunity. The Baptist Church's self-imposed silence, perhaps aimed at avoiding defamation suits, can inadvertently shield those accused of misconduct, allowing them to ascend in their careers unimpeded. And just to be clear, we know this sort of thing occurs in all kinds of other denominations and organizations where mentor figures are given influence and the trust of the vulnerable. So please don't feel like I'm picking on Baptists in particular. Because this story happens to be about Baptists, I'm not going to name drop other denominations or organizations that have also been guilty of inadvertently or otherwise covering up sexual misconduct, but I think we all know who I'm talking about. And so, we're left with a character study as complex as a labyrinth. Matt Baker embodies contradictions, benevolence juxtaposed against potential depravity, devoutness clouded by alleged moral lapses. The gravest among these questions hinges on the mysterious circumstances surrounding his wife Kari's life and death. She, a young woman with dreams of a Christian family, seems to have believed wholeheartedly in Matt's virtues. Yet the questionable episodes in Matt's past loom large, a web of complexities that makes his innocence, in this case, far from conclusive. It is a story marred by tragedy, unanswered questions, and a chilling sense that beneath the facade of religious dedication might lie a darker reality. The devil lurks behind the cross. A maxim coined in the book Don Quixote by legendary Spanish author Miguel Cervantes. Matt's career, ostensibly dedicated to serving the community and shaping young minds, carried a burdensome undercurrent. To supplement his income, he ran an after-school youth program at the YMCA. However, in June 1996, his life took a turn. He was terminated from his job under disturbing circumstances. The YMCA director had collected written statements from 4 young female employees claiming that Matt had sexually propositioned them. One of the women recounted Matt telling her, quote, "I'm horny, and I want to have sex with you now," unquote. While another narrated that Matt had suddenly said, quote, "I just want to fuck you right here, right now," touched her pants near her genitalia, and then placed her hands on his crotch. Unfazed by the inquiries, Matt claimed the allegations were false. He argued that the YMCA had terminated him only because they believed he had inquired about one of the employees' sexual exploits with her boyfriend. To his account, it was all a misunderstanding. He defended himself saying, "Other people were around the skate room who knew that didn't happen," and went on to claim that his line of work naturally exposed him to accusations from females who misunderstood his actions. Seems kinda difficult to misunderstand someone grabbing your crotch and telling you they want to have sex with you right now, but okay, Matt. Matt then pointed out a fact, that these remained just allegations, and so they did, kept away in files at the YMCA, First Baptist of Waco, and Baylor, the institutions that Matt had been associated with. Astonishingly, none of these accusations surfaced when Matt was accepted into George W. Truett Theological Seminary at Baylor. Nor did anyone speak up when Matt took his first job as a pastor at Pecan Grove Baptist in Gatesville, a church that had a history of nurturing promising preacher boys from Baylor. In 1998, Matt's pastoral journey took him to Williams Creek Baptist Church in Axtell. He won hearts. He expanded the children's Sunday school and youth programs. His sermons struck chords. "God is looking for people to be transformed," he often declared. Meanwhile, Kari, described by friends as the perfect pastor's wife, led Bible study groups and opened her heart and home to those in distress. Once, a young man struggling with his sexuality approached her, and instead of lecturing, Kari warmly embraced him and assured, "God will always love you. Always." However, it's crucial to note that Kari seemed unperturbed by the murkiness surrounding Matt. Her mother, Linda, recalled conversations where Kari defended Matt, dismissing allegations against him as either misunderstandings or attention-seeking fabrications by young women. Her steadfast belief in her husband's innocence, coupled with her radiant spirit, made them appear as the embodiment of a wholesome young Baptist family. Then, the Bakers' life underwent a seismic shift. In late 1998, their second child, Cassidy, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Oh man. Despite 90 days in the hospital and numerous complications, the baby girl lost her battle for life on March 22, 1999, and the family's world collapsed. Kari's grief was tangible, her loss insurmountable. She was seen digging at her daughter's fresh grave with her bare hands, a haunting image of a mother's despair. The church community did their best to support Kari, who was struggling to get out of bed. Food and flowers and condolences were showered. Yet the void was unfillable. An outdoor prayer garden was erected in Cassidy's memory, but the darkness continued to envelop Kari. Matt recounted a particularly harrowing event. According to him, Kari ran out of the house with a knife, mumbling about ending things. He said he found her at the church playground, where they both succumbed to tears before he escorted her back home. This saga leaves us with unresolvable tensions and ethical ambiguities. Here is a community that seeks spiritual guidance from individuals whose lives are laden with troubling questions and unresolved allegations. How do institutions entrusted with the moral and spiritual well-being of the community fail to hold their leaders accountable? The story raises unsettling questions about systemic failure and societal neglect, leading us to question whether the mask of sanctity worn by some can be the very cloak that hides evil. In an attempt to distance themselves from the haunting memories of their daughter Cassidy, Matt and Kari shifted their lives, even changing towns. By 2000, Matt was leading the congregation at First Baptist Church in Riesel, or it might be Riesel, I'm not sure. 2 years later, he took on the role of pastor at North Lake Baptist in Dallas, coinciding with Kari pursuing a master's degree in leadership and management. Yet, by 2005, they returned to Waco, their lives orbiting around the familial roots and the resting place of their lost child. In Waco, Matt found employment as the chaplain for the Waco Center for Youth and also as the pastor of Crossroads Baptist in Hewitt, a church that Kari's parents frequented. According to Jim Doolin, a senior inspector for a Department of Defense facility and deacon at the church, the congregation was optimistic. Matt was seen as the spark that would invigorate their modest gathering, hopeful to grow in the shadow of a new neighbor across the street. Both Matt and Kari immersed themselves in their church duties, and Kari even started teaching at a nearby elementary school. However, signs of persistent, inescapable grief began to surface. Emails sent by Kari to Matt illustrated her emotional descent, culminating in a devastating admission. For the first time, she had truly realized their daughter was never coming back, and it felt as if she were reliving her loss anew, and it fractured her. As March, the anniversary of Cassidy's passing, approached, her emotional state continued to deteriorate. Her best friend, Jill Holtz, a high school drama teacher, noticed Kari's shift. According to Holtz, Kari's disposition during that spring was becoming increasingly bleak. A heated argument between the couple exacerbated matters. While praying during Cassidy's last days, Matt asked for a cure, and Kari asked for an end to their daughter's suffering, even if it meant her death. Matt's subsequent emails accused Kari of essentially willing their daughter to death. God, what an asshole. Not that a grieving parent should be judged. I can't imagine what that horrible, horrible sadness is like. But the implication that she had willed her daughter to death, delivered by the one person there to support her, shattered Kari. She became convinced that Matt was having an affair, adding yet another crack to her fragile emotional state. Despite assurances from Holtz, she sought professional help, visiting a therapist she'd met after Cassidy's death. In that session, she shared an unsettling revelation. She'd found a mysterious bottle of pills in Matt's briefcase and believed he was plotting her murder. When asked to repeat her claims, she retracted, promising to call back if her, quote, obsessive thoughts, unquote, persisted. The call never came. Despite the dark cloud hanging over her, Kari was seen in high spirits as she interviewed for a new job. Later that day, she, Matt, and their children were at the YMCA. Witnesses say she was her usual outgoing self, greeting people cheerfully. Then, tragedy struck. She vanished. A midnight call from Matt to 911 announced her presumed suicide. This is a tale not just of individual sorrow, but a heartbreaking look into the depths of human emotions, marriage, and the irreversible scars that loss leaves on a family. As the community reconciles with what unfolded, lingering questions remain. What drove Kari into her own abyss of despair? Was Matt's coldness a reaction to his own buried grief or something more sinister? What of the mysterious pills? The case reverberates with tragic ambiguity, a haunting reminder that sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry are emotions left unspoken. And on that note, before I let you go today, I'd like to mention, as I often do, the free 24-hour, 7-day-a-week Lifeline number 988 that you can call anytime to receive immediate counseling for substance use, mental health, or suicidal thoughts. So if you find yourself in a dark, dark place, please do call 988. Program it into your phone now. And please do remember that you are loved and the world is a better place with you in it. Now, I'm not qualified to help you if you're in a really desperate place, so in that case, God forbid, please do call 988. But if you'd like to reach out to me just to connect with someone, to share stories of your own personal challenges or your own Kinda Murdery story, please don't hesitate to do so. You can reach out to kindamurdery@gmail.com, @kindamurdery on all social media, or you can call the Kinda Murdery hotline, 888-MURDERY. That's 888-687-3379. You can share whatever you want. You can share a story of dealing with the challenges of living with a disability. As many of you know, I myself have cerebral palsy. You can share a Kinda Murdery story from your own life. There are really no rules. Just go ahead and give the Kinda Murdery hotline a call, 888-MURDERY. That's 888-687-3379. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, part 1 of The Devil Lurks Behind the Cross, the murder of Kari Baker. I'll be back with part 2, the thrilling conclusion. Don't worry, I'm not going to string you out for too long, on Sunday. Until then, I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.